always have this weird problem around this time of year where I worry a lot more about other people's businesses than I do about my own. And I think that it's because my brain's always working in the long term and the short term simultaneously, because that's just how my brain works, I guess. But at this time of year, I always worry a little bit because there are some people who really thrive during the holiday season and they're like, oh, yeah, this is it. Everyone's ready to buy. And then there are people who are like, maybe not the type to shove their way through a crowd and shout their own name and, be that person during the holiday season when everyone's dollars are stretched. And so I always have to remind myself and my clients that we have to stay out of other people's, well, they say pocketbooks, but not really. Like, stay out of other people's payment apps, right? Don't worry about other people's bank account statements and just figure out what it is that you want for yourself and for your business and stick to the plan. Well, I think that a big part of what makes that challenging is that we are naturally hard on ourselves. We all grew up in or were brought up in or are familiar with this capitalist system and how it's considered a good thing if you are always hustling. If you're working hard, that makes you a good person. And that's just not true, right? There's so many other factors that you need to consider when you think about like what kind of person you want to be. Do you want to be a kind person? Do you want to be a hardworking person? Do you want to be the kind of person who has that story where you worked so hard to get some kind of number, whether that's income or followers or, your weight on a scale. And then by the end, you burned out and you were exhausted. And now your story is about how you had to recover from that. Not that I'm saying that there's anything wrong with that kind of, success story, because obviously there's a lot to learn from it. But I'd really rather have you doing things at your own pace and taking care of yourself along the way. So at this time of year, pre-Q4, pre-holiday season, I'd like you to step back with me and consider what it means to be kind to yourself, to add a little bit more compassion to the way that you run your business, so that by the time New Year runs around, or maybe even when you're sitting at the table during the holidays and you're really down to your last thread, you know that you're still okay, like as a human in a human body. Make sense? So one of the things that I'd like to back up on and review with you are the definitions that I use for compassion. Now, typically, the word compassion is defined along the lines of, and I'm looking at Google here, sympathetic pity and concern for the sufferings and misfortunes of others. That sounds about right. Or here's another one that says to recognize the suffering of others and then take action to help. And I think that those are helpful definitions because definitely you want to be aware of other people. And for sure, especially in recent years, we've seen some people deny the suffering of other people and the things that we're learning about systemic racism and legacy admissions to, big universities and colleges, and of course, dangerous policing practices. But what I like to do, and the reason that I actually got so interested in the concept of compassion, was that I like to use the definition of self-compassion, which is composed of 3 different aspects. And this is based on the work of Dr. Kristen Neff. And basically it comes down to first kindness. So just the simple concept of being kind. The second one is mindfulness, which means seeing the situation for what it is, maybe not overgeneralizing it and not blowing it out of proportion. And then the third component is recognizing that whatever the situation is that you need to be more compassionate in, it actually brings you closer to the people around you. So there's an element of community baked into it. So today, let's look at being kind, being compassionate to yourself and to your clients as a business owner, as a small business owner, and seeing what kindness can actually do for you once you decide that you want to implement it into your business practices. It's funny that the idea of being kind is so simple that we swear that it must be more complicated than what it is. Like, just be nice to yourself. What does that mean for you. And of course, we probably all know what it means, right? Just to be nice. Don't be mean. Don't bully yourself. Don't be, the mean girl or whatever, characterization you give to someone who is mean within yourself or within your business kind of ecosystem. And so you can think about the ways that you get frustrated within your business. Most of the time, this has to do with marketing, right? If you spend any time in Facebook groups and you see those generalized call outs or discussion topics of, what is the hardest part about running your business? And usually it's something along the lines of money, time, or they just hate marketing and, blame the social media algorithm for not bringing in the sales. And so we're not talking about actual strategy here. We're talking about being kind to yourself in those moments, because I think that we can all reach a point where we're so frustrated that we start being unkind to ourselves, as in, wow, I should have really made it by now. And what am I even doing? I don't know what I'm doing. So I might as well just go ahead and quit. Or maybe you're networking with someone and you tell them, oh my gosh, I'm so terrible at marketing. I am awful at it. And you're saying that about yourself, right? In both of those situations, you are not being kind to yourself. And I think that that's easy to grasp for most people because we learn kindness in like early education. And so we're like, yeah, you should be nice. You shouldn't say those things. You should be like, I'm proud of myself. I am pursuing my dreams. I am stepping forward and using my voice, which is all true. It's still all true. I'm not saying that it's not. But I like to take a more active role in being compassionate, especially to myself and to my team, just in general and even to my business. Like if your business isn't set up the way that you want it, you can still be kind to it. And here's what I mean by that. Let's say you're that person that's saying, I don't have enough sales. I'm not making enough money. There's just not enough money to go around or to use for my business or to even make for my business because I'm running it at a loss. And so that's a very real struggle. And I don't want you to say like, basically love and light it away, but you can look at it in a way that is a little more kind to yourself, as in you are a person that you're telling these struggles to. And a really mean way of approaching it would be like, well, then just make more money. Well, then why don't you just go to the banks and, do the research so that you can get a loan? Or why don't you ask your friends to invest in your business? Why don't you just put it on your credit card and then trust, but since you're going to make the money back anyway, then why don't you go ahead and do that? And like, that's so mean that there's just so many levels to that where that is just not helpful, right? And so you might have a friend who says that kind of stuff, or you might have the kind of friend who's kind about it and says, you know what? That really sucks because a lot of businesses have, are backed by generational wealth. Or a lot of businesses are created because the founder had multiple streams of income and they had the room, the space to go ahead and experiment a little bit. And they actually experimented a lot. And this happened to be the one that took off. But losing the money that they invested into their business didn't actually hurt them that much. And so you see what I'm talking about? It's not necessarily about the actual situation, but it's your own reaction to the problem that you're having. You can be kind by being a little more understanding of your situation. Maybe take some time and like step back from it, and let yourself process. And I don't think that it's a matter of letting yourself feel sorry for yourself, because that's not what this is. This is the truth, right? You are using all of your resources. You're trying your best and you're using the time that you have. And sometimes that means that your business is not going to grow at the pace that you want it to. Well, the coping mechanism that I like to apply to this kind of situation is to be the most compassionate supervisor that you have ever had. And so what I mean is that if you're going to be wearing all of these hats, you may as well be the kind of boss that you wish that you could work for. And so what would that kind of boss or supervisor say to you in these kinds of situations? You can imagine, even if it's just yourself right now, but maybe you have a small office space. There's like 3 people, right? It's you and there's 2 other people. You really trust them. They're doing their best. You know that you get together once a week and you talk about what you're working on, and then you can tag team with them and say, I could actually use some input on this. Can we sit down together for like 15 minutes to just brainstorm some different ways to approach it? Things like that. In that kind of environment, do you think that, one of those very kind people would sit down and be like, well, why aren't you doing it? Why aren't you selling it? You're a marketer, right? Well, you're learning how to be really good at marketing, so you should, get better at it and really focus on it. And however hours it means that you have to work, go ahead and do it. That would never happen. Not in your most ideal working situation where you have your close-knit, business partners or, even high-level staff. You would never allow that kind of language, right? Because the idea is that we're trying not to do that. We do that all the time in like corporate America, where we're really bullying toward each other, or we threaten each other, or we, mock each other when basically the money isn't rolling in. Well, what would it look like if you didn't do that to yourself? If you didn't mirror that kind of culture and you were actually very kind to yourself instead? You would say, wow, yeah, marketing is hard. And you've got your family and you've got all these other things. And like, you're still trying not to catch COVID. And, now it's like the sports season or whatever. You would be very understanding and you would say, yeah, this is hard. And maybe at this time of year, we're not going to go as hard. Maybe we're not going to produce as much social media content. Maybe we're not going to have quite so many coffee chats. And maybe we're going to focus on the things that take a little bit less energy than we would, during a different time of year when you have much more energy and free time and, let's face it, fuel to actually push yourself. That's the kind of environment you need to create on your own, even without those trusted teammates that you'll have eventually, right? You'll have them eventually. But while it's you wearing all of the hats, you need to be really kind to yourself and not say all of the things that a supervisor you just don't respect and who doesn't respect you would say to you in moments like this. So that's about it for the kindness element of being self-compassionate in your business. I hope that kind of like levels things out for you and gives you some things to think about. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me if you're like, I'm not quite sure how to be kind to myself in this particular situation. I am all for digging into it. Okay. And just coming up with different ideas of how to approach this very complicated challenge of growing a business on your own without being all like, salesy marketing bro about it. Because there's a certain kind of feeling that you're going for. There's a certain kind of like peace and calm and just general feeling that everything is right with the world that you're trying to create from the bottom up. And so I get that. And yeah, if you have any questions or you have something that's really on your mind regarding being kind to yourself, even if it seems like it should be simple, it's not all the time. So reach out to me, check out the show notes, and yeah, I will see you in the next episode where we talk about being mindful, the aspect of mindfulness within your business as a self-compassionate business owner. See you then.